What if the only thing standing between you and, ultimate unshakable happiness is, well, you?
Right, literally yourself.
Yeah. I mean, if you're anything like the rest of us, you probably spend a massive amount of your energy trying to build and protect your identity. You're
Ah.
constantly gathering new information, figuring out how to navigate your career, curating a personal brand.
Oh, totally. We're all trying to optimize our morning routine so we can be this, like, better version of ourselves.
Exactly. It's this endless, exhausting accumulation of knowledge, status, and just self-improvement.
We treat our identities like these fragile empires.
Mm.
We gather facts, accolades, even our traumas sometimes,
Mm.
and we stack them up to build a fortress around who we think we are.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
And the assumption in modern culture is always that if you feel overwhelmed, well, you just need a better fortress. You need a new strategy, a new framework, another deep dive, another book.
But today we're looking at a framework that flips that entire modern obsession completely upside down.
Completely on his head.
Yeah. We're doing a deep dive into some excerpts from a 2006 text. It's called The Blissful Path of Relinquishing the Self by Deiform Buddha, and it was translated by Kinyu.
And, what's fascinating here is that the core premise isn't about adding to your mental hard drive to find peace. It's about completely wiping the drive.
Right. The solution isn't learning more. It's entirely erasing the learner altogether.
Exactly.
The text boils it down to this one highly provocative mission. Totally lose the self, attain a state of blissful openness.
Which is a profoundly radical proposition, honestly.
Ugh.
What makes this particular translation so intriguing is how it takes these incredibly lofty, ancient mystical concepts and applies them as a direct, almost surgical psychological tool.
It's proposing a systematic dismantling of the human ego to cure everyday stress.
Yeah, precisely.
And before we get into the psychology of how that actually works, I love the origin story of that core phrase.
Oh, it's so good.
Right. You hear, totally lose the self, attain a state of blissful openness, and you naturally picture, I don't know, a monk writing on parchment in some isolated mountaintop monastery centuries ago.
That's the vibe, for sure.
But the text notes that this specific phrase actually emerged from a spontaneous flash of spiritual insight by Chanyuan celestial Yuanye. And the location. He was standing right at Niagara Falls in Canada.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition, isn't it? You have this cowering, deafening force of nature, literally millions of gallons of water crashing down every single second. And in the face of that sheer indifferent scale, this spontaneous realization just hits.
Wow.
Because when you're standing next to something that massive and that ancient, your personal grievances, your career goals, your carefully curated identity, they instantly just feel incredibly small.
They just get completely washed out by the noise.
Exactly. But the author doesn't just treat this as some, fleeting moment of awe at a tourist trap.
Mhm.
The argument here is that this specific ego-shattering insight actually encapsulates the absolute pinnacle of attainment for anyone searching for peace.
It's the ultimate finish line.
Right. And the text builds a really compelling historical lineage to back this up, pointing out that this isn't just one person's epiphany at a waterfall.
Yeah, it connects this exact state of mind to some of the heaviest hitters in human history. It asks us to look at the patterns, right? Like, why did Buddha Shakyamuni advocate so forcefully for the abandonment of the self? Why did Jesus Christ implore his followers to relinquish themselves and their worldly attachments? Why did the ancient sage Laozi champion principles that translate to concepts like indifference, practicing non-action, and holding on to the one?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the through line is undeniable. The text posits that all these diverse historical teachings, spanning totally different cultures and millennia, they actually converge on this single unifying mechanism, the total surrender of the ego. And the guaranteed outcome of successfully executing that surrender is this state of blissful openness. The text equates this to achieving unity with heaven and humanity. It's a state where the mind and spirit just ascend to a realm of supreme, unshakable bliss.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more. Let's dig into why this extreme step is deemed so absolutely necessary. Because the text presents a very stark, uncompromising equation about human suffering.
It really does.
It basically argues that your inability to reach ultimate bliss stems entirely, like 100%, from the mere existence of yourself.
Yeah, there is zero middle ground in this philosophy. In fact, the text goes so far as to label the self as a devil.
A devil. Wow.
Yeah, it's positioned as the fundamental impediment that obstructs our journey to peace. It draws this direct, almost mathematical correlation. The more potent your self is, meaning the stronger your ego, your desires, your personal opinions, your sense of uniqueness, the further you drift from heaven.
Okay, I want to try an analogy here. Think of the self like wearing an incredibly heavy, suffocating lead backpack.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. You've been wearing it for so long, literally since you developed consciousness as a toddler, that you completely forgot you even have it on. Your shoulders ache constantly, you're exhausted, and you keep trying to solve the pain by, like, stuffing more bliss into the backpack.
Right.
You put a new car in there, a promotion, a perfect relationship, a good review from your boss, but the backpack just gets heavier.
Because even the good things, your reputation, your pride, and your achievements, they're still attachments. They still require energy to maintain and protect.
Exactly. And the text is essentially saying, stop trying to put things in the backpack to make it comfortable. You cannot optimize the backpack. You just have to unclip it and let it hit the floor entirely.
And that physical sensation of dropping a 50-pound weight from your shoulders is exactly how the text describes the resulting state of selflessness. It uses words like ethereal, serene, joyful, and free.
That sounds incredible, honestly.
It frames bliss not as an object you acquire, but as the natural buoyancy that occurs the moment the dense gravity of the ego is removed.
So conceptually, taking off the backpack sounds amazing. But, it's easy enough to imagine dropping your ego when you're staring at millions of gallons of water at Niagara Falls.
Sure.
The real test is keeping it dropped when you're stuck in rush hour traffic or when you're just, like, scrolling through your phone. How does the text suggest we bridge that gap and apply this when we're hit with normal, ugly human emotions?
Well, the text tackles this head-on with very specific mundane examples.
Yeah.
Let's start with jealousy and frustration. We live in an era where we're constantly exposed to people who are wealthier, people with higher status, more fame, better looks, more talent.
Which is literally an engineered feature of modern life. You open any app and within 3 seconds you're looking at someone younger, richer, and better looking than you, living a life you can't afford.
It's brutal.
It naturally breeds this inexplicable jealousy and unease.
And that unease is direct suffering. So the prescribed action in the text is to actively transform yourself into nothingness in your consciousness.
Nothing.
Right. When your ideals feel impossible to realize and you feel that bitter, creeping frustration, the text advises a mental retreat. It says you should retreat 10,000 steps until you literally cannot find yourself anymore.
I love the mechanics of that 10,000 steps idea. It's like, okay, you're standing in your living room feeling jealous of a coworker, and you mentally zoom out to your street, then zoom out to the city skyline, then the continent, then the Earth from orbit, then the solar system. By the time you retreat 10,000 steps into the cosmos, your coworker taking credit for your spreadsheet is literally subatomic. It doesn't exist.
Exactly. You zoom out so far that the scale of your personal frustration becomes mathematically insignificant. From that distant vantage point, your grievances aren't just small, they look genuinely laughable. They dissolve into the background radiation of the universe.
Okay, but I have to push back here for a second because this brings up a massive red flag for a lot of people.
Okay, what is it?
If someone is just passively wealthier than you, sure, zoom out. But what if someone is actively harming you? What if they misunderstand you, mock you, or maliciously insult you? The text says abandoning the self cures this. But isn't turning yourself into nothingness when you're being attacked just a form of, like, trauma-induced dissociation?
That's a fair question.
How is zooming out 10,000 steps different from just becoming a doormat and giving up?
It's a vital distinction to make, and it's the crux of how this entire philosophy operates. The text absolutely does not frame this as giving up in a defeated, submissive sense. You aren't cowering.
Okay.
It frames it as elevating your perspective to a point of literal invulnerability.
Invulnerability through absence.
Precisely. Let's break down the mechanics of an insult. An insult is an arrow, and an arrow requires a physical target to hit in order to cause damage.
Right.
Your ego, your pride, your sense of justice, yourself is the bullseye. You just stand there and take the insult. Trying to be strong, the arrow still hits the bullseye. You still feel the impact, you're just suppressing the pain.
Which is exhausting and usually leads to resentment anyway.
Right. But if you completely remove the target, if you truly become nothingness in your consciousness, you become empty space. The arrow just flies harmlessly through the air and lands in the dirt.
Oh, wow.
There's no one there to be insulted. You aren't forcing yourself not to feel pain. You have fundamentally removed the entity that is capable of feeling the pain.
That is a profound shift in mechanics. You don't build a thicker shield, you just dematerialize.
Exactly.
That makes complete sense for a petty workplace insult or professional jealousy. But it's one thing to let a stranger's insult fly through you. What happens when the arrow is fired by someone you share a life with?
Ah,
Because as we move into the next section of the source material, this philosophy gets applied to our deepest, most profound human attachments. And I'll admit, this is where the text gets genuinely shocking.
it does not pull its punches.
Yeah.
It takes this concept of detachment to its absolute logical limits.
Let's look at the spousal infidelity example. The text actually addresses what happens if a spouse becomes emotionally attached to someone else, causing you inner turmoil. For most people, betrayal by a partner is arguably one of the most agonizing, foundation-shaking things a human being can experience. But the text suggests that if you abandon the self and observe the situation from a heavenly perspective, it will not only lead to understanding, but it can actually make the situation seem amusing.
Yeah.
I mean, wait, amusing. How on earth is someone cheating on you amusing?
It is incredibly jarring to read from our normal human perspective, absolutely. But we have to look at the psychological rewiring the author is demanding.
Okay.
If you successfully execute that 10,000-step retreat, if you are entirely detached from your identity as a husband or a wife, you're no longer a participant in the drama. You're watching biological organisms navigate complex, fleeting emotional impulses on a tiny rock in space.
So it's treating human drama like a nature documentary.
Exactly. The unbearable pain of betrayal relies entirely on the concept of ownership, the concept of mine, my spouse, my marriage, my future, my pride. The betrayal is an attack on the self's territory.
Oh,
But if the self doesn't exist, there is no mine. If you remove the me and the mine, the tragedy loses its anchor. The text argues that watching people scramble, lie, and stress over these temporary biological impulses becomes a sort of absurd cosmic comedy.
that is a staggering level of emotional detachment. You're literally unwiring the deepest social contracts we have. And it doesn't stop with spouses. What about the biological imperative to protect our kids? Or the duty to care for aging parents?
The text brings that up specifically. The worry we feel for the safety and future of our children or the health of our parents is primal. It's baked into our DNA.
Definitely.
But the text advises that in those late-night moments of agonizing worry, you should consider yourself as non-existent or even dead. It promises that doing so will bring instant relief.
Imagining yourself dead to stop worrying about your kid's future, that is intense.
It severs the cord of attachment right at the root. The burden of parental responsibility is incredibly heavy. We suffer because we believe we're the sole architects of their safety.
Right, if we fail, they fall.
But by mentally simulating your own non-existence, you force yourself to realize that the universe will continue without you. If you don't exist, you simply cannot carry the burden of their future. You surrender them to the flow of life, which, ironically, might make you a calmer, more present parent in reality.
And then the text scales this up. It moves from the family unit to the macro-societal level. It addresses our political and national identities.
Oh, this part is so relevant right now.
It specifically mentions the drive to dedicate yourself to your ethnicity, your political party, your religion, or your country. That heavy, pervasive feeling that you bear the responsibility for the rise and fall of the world.
We see this constantly today. People are profoundly stressed, losing sleep, and destroying relationships over political ideologies and national events they have very little actual control over.
Yeah.
The text suggests viewing yourself as someone who never even existed on Earth to begin with. Now, by doing so, it reveals all these grand societal struggles as absurd. It compares them to playing childish games.
It's fascinating how universally the author applies this mechanism. And just to be super clear, as an impartiality check here, whether you're fiercely dedicated to a left-wing cause of social activism or deeply committed to right-wing ideals of patriotism and civic duty, the text doesn't care.
Not at all.
We're not taking a side here, but the text views any ideological attachment, any belief that my group must win as just another layer of the ego. It's just another heavy item in the backpack.
Because anytime you identify with a group, you expand the self to include that group. Now, an insult to your country is an insult to you.
Yeah.
A defeat for your political party is a defeat for you. You've just created a massive country-sized target for the arrows to hit.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think about it like you're playing a highly immersive, incredibly stressful virtual reality video game. You have the headset on, you're sweating, your heart rate is at 150 beats per minute because your avatar is about to lose a massive war, or their digital family is in danger, or their castle is burning down. You are suffering.
Yeah, you're fully in it.
And this text is essentially walking into the room, Taking the headset off your face and saying, look at your hands. You are holding a piece of plastic. You are not the character on the screen. The war, the castle, the politics, it's all just pixels.
Let's evolve that metaphor even further, because the text goes deeper than just putting down the controller. It's asking you to realize that you aren't even the player holding the controller.
Wait, really?
You're the electricity running through the console. You're the raw awareness that allows the game to exist, but you are completely untouched by what happens inside the game. Whether the avatar wins the election or loses the war, the electricity remains unchanged.
Wow.
By recognizing that the self in the game is an illusion, the stress completely evaporates. You can still watch the screen, but you're no longer suffering over the plot.
Which brings us to the final, ultimate surrender in the text. If the author asks you to detach from your loved ones and detach from the fate of your society, the final, inescapable step is detaching from your own biological survival.
Yes. The text forces us to confront our most visceral, core physical fears. It specifically lists the fear of starving, the fear of freezing, being beaten, being crashed into, illness, or shame.
It's basically a checklist of the brain's deepest evolutionary alarm bells.
Exactly. And the suffering caused by these fears usually happens long before the actual event. We suffer today because we're terrified of starving tomorrow. So the text offers its ultimate solution, preemptive death.
Preemptive death.
It advises mentally placing yourself in a state of death before anything actually happens to you.
How does one even process that? Simulating your own death to feel better.
It's the ultimate form of existential exposure therapy. By completely abandoning the biological imperative to survive, by accepting that the self is temporary, and agreeing to let it go right now, you remove the anticipation of suffering. The text claims that if you do this, you can calmly face various forms of death. In fact, it goes so far as to say that death itself will actually become a pleasure.
Because if you have already mentally died, if you've already let go of the self entirely and accepted your return to nothingness, then physical death is no longer a tragedy.
Exactly.
It's just a transition. It's the final unhooking of the backpack. You cannot kill something that has already willingly ceased to exist.
It's the absolute final removal of the target. When we synthesize this entire journey the author has walked us through, the progression is just breathtakingly systematic.
It really is a step-by-step demolition.
It starts with that spontaneous realization of awe at Niagara Falls. Then it asks you to use that awe to drop everyday professional jealousy. From there, it pushes you to sever the agonizing attachments to your spouse's fidelity and the worry for your children. Then, it dismantles your patriotism, your politics, and your perceived duty to save the world. And finally, it asks you to mentally accept and embrace your own physical death. It systematically kicks out every single pillar that holds up the human ego, all to reach what it promises is an unshakable state of blissful openness.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, still walking around with this heavy backpack? The core promise of this text is profound. Selflessness is a beautiful, ethereal, serene state that instantly cures all human suffering. And the only thing standing in the way of your ultimate joy is you. It's your ego.
Yeah.
The text ends with a surprisingly enthusiastic, almost casual call to action, considering the massive psychological heavy lifting we just discussed. It simply says, give it a try.
Just give it a try. Try putting down the controller, step out of the video game, and see how it feels to just be the electricity for a minute.
But I want to leave you, listening to this, with a final, lingering question to ponder on your own. It's something that builds on the extreme reality of everything we've unpacked today. If our deepest human connections, our incredible art, our passions, our empathy, and our relentless drive to cure diseases and improve the world, if all of those things actually stem from the existence of the self and its struggles, does achieving this ultimate state of blissful openness mean we solve all our pain, but lose the very friction that makes the human experience so colorful?
That's a big question.
If every single person on Earth successfully lost their self tomorrow, what would our world actually look like?
Would it be a perfect, serene utopia of peace, or just a quiet planet of ghosts?
It's a massive question to sit with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you decide to keep your heavy backpack of knowledge and identity strapped on tight, or if you're brave enough to try taking it off and erasing the learner entirely, we are thrilled you spent this time exploring it with us. See you next time.